Hello and a very warm welcome to everyone. I am Shreya Agrawal and today we have a session on building a customer-centric organization. It's a pretty meaningful dispatch. Before we deep dive with this August panel, let's do some context setting for the same. The COVID-19 pandemic has lit a fire underneath the need for companies to become customer-centric. But it's more than just taking a customer survey or meeting employees. It's all about making sure that the management of enterprises make all the strategic moves and decisions with their customers in mind. Such companies place a premium on customer experience and make it a central part of their mission and brand, maybe even placing it above profits as a priority. For such enterprises, it's not just a buzzword. It is actually about making sure the customer is always and always satisfied. According to Deloitte and Touche, customer centric companies are 60% more profitable than companies that aren't. In this experience economy, we are finding ourselves in is it better differentiator than customer experience? Standing out from the crowd to sustain one's company in such a hyper competitive market, what needs to be done? How can a positive customer experience be fostered at every stage of the customer journey? How can customer centricity be embedded in the very DNA of a company? How can a customer oriented outlook create loyalty and satisfaction from consumers? To break it all down, please help me welcome Vadiraj Alapanavar from ACO, Vamshi Bhatiani from Call Health Services Private Limited, Vishal Kaul from Concentrix, and Nitin Jagdish from Centec. Gentlemen, it's my sheer pleasure and privilege to welcome you all to this pretty meaningful dispatch. I think it's very important to sort of begin this conversation with a very open ended question. All of us really know, and this has been really bandied around in so many leadership conversations about customer centricity. But despite consumers playing such a big and bigger role increasingly in the strategy of companies, why do you think there's still such a struggle for organizations to get their customer centricity right? I'll begin with you, Nitin, get on to Adiraj, and then Vamshi. Yes.
Hi, thank you. Hello, everyone. Pleasure to be part of this discussion. I feel in today's world, customer centricity plays a very important role, especially after the pandemic. We've seen that most of the things have gone virtual. And I feel today why it is important is that if you look at it from enterprise standpoint, most of our senior leaders talk about customer centricity as an important aspect. They say it's very relevant from the market standpoint. But most leaders they talk, but they don't walk the walk. What I mean by walk the walk is that we feel it is very important. We feel it is very critical. But when it comes to execution, somewhere we are always lacking there. I'll just give you an example. We did a survey with a lot of C-suite customers in India, and we figured out that more than 30% doesn't have a C-suite person. That means nobody owns customer service as a portfolio, or there is no senior executive who's managing or running it. So it's important that we feel when we know that customer service, customer support is very, very important. We actually, most of our companies today don't have a exec sponsor or a C-suite person who actually runs that for us. And mostly, if you see, I feel personally, every customer interaction is an opportunity. It gives us an opportunity to know our customers well. In spite of that, if you see, most of our senior executives today, I will say more than 60% don't even look at the report or the metrics that is run by on customer support or customer service team. So it's important that we just don't talk about it. We also invest time when it comes to customer centricity and customer management. And it's also important that we somehow marry the customer service metrics with. I personally feel it is important that every executive has a compensation aligned to it. What do I mean by alignment to it is that if you see most of the senior executives are linked with something or the other from a customer service standpoint, but it is clearly not mentioned or those metrics are currently not measured or tracked properly. If I have to go back to the report that we got it done, we saw that 52% of the compensation is linked to CSAT score. Only 38% are linked to NPS, and only 26% are linked to customer retention. What do I mean by this is there is a huge potential in terms of making C-suite more accountable for customer service and outcomes of those. Why it is important? Because we all know that in any high growth companies, everyone has a passion for customer experience, and that is how, as Rija talked about, how do you differentiate a growing company versus a regular company? And these are the parameters I feel are very important when it comes to a growing company, that everybody is passionate about customer experience and they measure the customer experience at every level, not just at a support agent level, but at every level of an organization. And this is very important. And how can we do this? It's I personally feel it is very well doable. What we can do, we can measure those parameters that is very important, or the CX customer experience outcome, tie that to the growth. Take the metric that we want to measure, tie it to the growth of the company, and talk about metrics every day, every week, every month. I think that should be the mantra. And most successful organizations today, you see, they are they talk about customer metrics at every level, at every day, and every hour. And I personally feel that the C-suite executive, whether a CEO or a CFO or a CEO, should go to the contact center or customer support center and spend time with them. Understand what customers are talking about. We hear it from third party. We hear it from agents. But I personally feel that we should also spend time with the agent to understand what's happening, what are the customers are talking about, hear from the customer. Maybe if given an opportunity, why don't we talk to the customer? That gives us a more help in understanding what are the needs of the customer. If we are a product company, we can better our product. If we are a service company, we can better our service in many ways. And also look at the conversations that are happening and get a more rounded perspective of what customers are looking for. Even as vendors today, if you see, that is one of the key parameters that we look at it, that how much time, what are the customers saying in our market, and we include that in our product roadmap, bring about changes that
That's very well said by Nitin in terms of the fact that the leadership essentially is not looking at customer centricity in as serious fashion as it should be. I mean, there is no P&L or there is no C-suite responsibility attached in the leadership. So why is it not really like that? I mean, people talk from a very 10,000 feet level that we are customer obsessed, we place customer at the center. But if organizations are as serious as they preach about customer centricity, then why not assign really a C-suite responsibility to this as a very important P&L function like we have for others? You want to go first, Vadiraj?
Yes, Shrija, I think, aptly, told by the panelist. I think, it's a very, very important C-suite kind of a view that one should take of customer experience. I mean, and there's no disagreement on that. But where I would like to kind of differ slightly is, while I would say maybe a few years back or a decade back, the thought was different. I mean, I think, in terms of understanding CX not being at the top of the radar. I mean, I think, it's only P&L growth, levers being the most important things that get reviewed. And I've been in the industry for 2 decades. I've seen the change, not just globally. I mean, in India, how the whole things have changed and kind of and what it is now. So what I slightly would differ is, I mean, and I can speak. I mean, I think from in the current position where I am with Echo, I mean, where I lead the products, I think customer experience and all the metrics that we talked about, I think they get reviewed almost in various forums. I mean, at fortnightly, monthlies, quarterly roadmaps. In fact, what's more pleasing, I think, and that's possibly one of the tenets of a very growing startup. I mean, especially more important in a kind of a D2C or a P2C kind of a company, which is very, very customer facing, right? Like, for instance, for Echo, I think our whole business hinges on the customer growth. And when you talk about customer growth, I think customer experience is a kind of a lever which actually kind of works in tandem with that. So I would say that at least in most of the startups, emerging consumer internet companies, there is no choice. I mean, whether at the top of the level, whether they're reviewing it or not, I don't think if you I mean, if you talk to most of the growing unicorns or decacorns or unicorn plus plus kind of companies, I think it will be reviewed at the top of the levels. I mean, again, where I would say, like, that 10,000 view is broken down. I think, that is what I would say. What I call is a 10,000 view is a customer experience. But what usually happens in these scale or scaling D2C, B2C kind of companies is they're like, it's not just customer support. I think, the way we view the world is right from where you start engaging the customer. I mean, I think I would say we take right from where the discovery happens to acquisition, how the funnel is tracked, where they're dropping, why they're dropping. I mean, and what is it takes to come in, I mean, get him back into the funnel, re-engage. And then once he's a customer, I mean, how do you kind of keep him engaged throughout his cycle? In our case, I think, unlike a e-commerce company, I think, where there is lot many touch points. I think, in a insurance company, it's I think, either people come for buying, purchase, which is purchase, or claims, or renewal reimbursements. I think, so we, from our side, I think, we have very limited touch points. And I think, from a customer experience standpoint, I think, we need to do the best when we get a chance to interact. So at least I would say that, it is one of the important levers. I mean, at least what I've seen, it was not there maybe 5-10 years back. I think, yes, it was slightly somewhere cornered, but now I think, it is at the top of the level. I mean, like, for example, I mean, any customer experience problem gets escalated. I think, there is a notification to all the leaders from the CEO. I mean, from the CEO's desk. I mean, I think Varun, who's our CEO, sometimes, I mean, he takes the liberty to just email, I think, what is the problem with this? How do we solve it? And suddenly, I mean, I think, and I mean, like any other problem, it's not just because a problem coming from a CEO, but there is a customer experience problem, whether on the pre-sales side, whether it's a post-sales side, or whatever it is. So at least I differ from that view that it's changing for good. Walk the talk is happening, and but I'm not denying what has been said. I think, if you take an average, I think, that maturity needs to come in. I mean, I think the companies which are not yet there, I think they need to understand what it takes to scale. At what and one level of scale, it automatically becomes the norm. And I think, it's a journey for all companies. I think, maybe it's very very pertinent for product companies because there is no choice. For service companies or any other slightly different companies, I think the yardsticks are different. I think, uh, but at least talking, I mean, taking an instance of consumer internet startups, I think, there's no choice. We have to keep fingers and everything to make those things happen.
Thanks for that, Vadiraj. So essentially, his argument is that there has been no evolution. Perhaps 5 years or 10 years back, customer centricity was not necessarily top of the agenda, but now it is at the top of the agenda, at least for CEOs. There's communication when something is escalated. But that actually does not really solve the argument which Nitin sort of laid out. That why is there not a C-suite responsibility attached to it? For instance, you have a chief operating officer, you have a chief marketing officer, you have a CHR, or you have a chief strategy officer. Why don't we see a chief employee experience officer or a chief customer experience officer? And the conventional wisdom would really be that if I were to look at unicorns and technology startups from a distance, I mean, they all look the same. They all come and tell me, Shrija, we have great technology, we have great product team, we are all well funded. So I think it all comes down to the moat, the competitive advantage, which in my view, which distinguishes one company from the other in a similar space, one e-commerce company from the other, one insurtech company from the other, like Echo, is customer experience. So if something is as vital to success of your organization, why really don't attach a C-suite responsibility to that? Yes, Vamshi, want to take a stab at that?
So, hi Shrija, thanks for having me here. Um, different perspectives, right? That's what we bring to the table. So, I've been fortunate enough to have been working with healthcare and emergency services in the last 2 decades, and my experience has been around startups, setting up startups, and then ensuring that they scale. That was my portfolio in both these places. And when you say some of the practices, management practices that we see today, they've all originated in predominantly manufacturing, right? So most of the practices of managing time, okay, monitoring progress, monitoring quality, all of these things have been a hand down from manufacturing. We being a new age company and in healthcare, for example, if so one of the decisions that we took pretty early when we were starting up was to not have a quality department. Now that comes as a shock to many people. Why shouldn't we have a department which focuses on quality, right? So many of the panelists here would agree that as soon as you say, okay, there is a quality department, and the responsibility of quality gets turned to that department. Now you have to beat the quality out of whatever product or service that is coming up, or you have to ensure that it becomes a part of the process that generates quality and productivity and all of those measures out of it. So one of that decision, when we took that decision, we said, okay, if we eliminate a department called quality, who's responsible for quality? So we said every role player in the entire organization is responsible for quality, and every role player has it in their KRA for focusing on quality. And like Nitin said, it's all tied to their compensation. Now, if I, as an individual, am not focused on quality, then I get a dip at the end of the year or the end of the quarter or any of these things. And one of the biggest quality metric that we have is customer experience or customer satisfaction. And once we ensured this, and it's not easy to drive such a big change because everybody who you hire in a startup has come from another industry or an industry which is established, and would carry some of this baggage with them and want to replicate because it worked. No questions that it did not work. But when you want to try doing something new, it takes that much of time and the effort. And now that time and effort is what we should sponsor as C-suite executives. That anybody who joins, for example, if a new employee or an officer, as we call them here, joins us, we put them on a 6-day CH live program, call health live program. So they get to live as a phlebotomist who runs in the heat of this summer and understands what is the pain that a provider goes through. They also get to meet all the customers, right? And this exercise we repeat it every quarter. So 6 days. This sponsorship comes from the C-suite. Now, all of these are where you say, okay, oh, I'm losing 6 days of productivity. No, you are not losing 6 days of productivity. We are in fact gaining so many insights that in the next 3 months, or 4 months, the amount of improvement that we can make with this feedback is immense, and definitely adds both to the top line and the bottom line because we understand the customers better.
Thanks
So
for that,
few of
Vamshi.
these
Yeah.
practices I would say, yeah.
Thanks for that, Vamshi.
Yeah,
That's sort of well said. So I think the point is sort of well taken. Like you mentioned, that in your organization, there are leaders who are actually, they have to undergo that CH sort of life program, right, to understand the on the ground real challenges of your external client base. But perhaps there could be one thinking that it's 6 days of productive work gone. So why is it that the customer experience function always rolls back in the heads of the leaders saying, okay, this is a cost center. I have to be frugal as an organization. And this could be an additional cost center for me. But I think if there's a switch in the thinking that, okay, it's a strategic decision which can actually reap benefits for me in a larger or longer period of time, you think that's a difficult sell for leaders even now? Because ultimately, to be fair, everybody wants to be frugal. People want to keep their costs low. And some of these hires could be expensive hires. So, Nitin, how do you respond to that? This entire question of customer experience really coming in as a fancy cost center for an organization.
So I think it's a great question. And if you look at it, I generally felt most of the organization today feels contact center, customer service as a cost center, which I don't believe in. I don't think so. It is like that. And if you look at it, just to give an example, in last 2 years, data shows that 100% there is an increase in customer service. But how many organizations actually have gone and invested money in customer service? I feel not many, maybe 30%, maybe 40%, but not many people have gone and invested in technology or anything of that sort. And where do I invest? If I need to make it as a profitable or a bottom, hey, help my bottom line, where do I need to invest? Do I need to invest in agents? Do I need to invest in training? Do I need to invest in a tool? There's always a question mark for all the CX level people that where do I invest? If you ask me honestly, I think all the three are important. You need to make sure that you have one way. I was listening to the Netflix CEO, and he tells that what is the optimum level for everything is that you keep the employees busy. If your customer service executives are busy, that is the optimum level. So that is what we should look at it. Neither they should be over burdened with the work or they should have less work. It should be that level where they are always busy, their job is 9 to 6, and they take care of the job and do the job very well. And I feel, if, as I said earlier also, that every chat, every opportunity to chat with a customer gives you an opportunity. It gives you opportunity to cross-sell, upsell. It gives you an opportunity to retain the customer, which is very important. It also gives you an opportunity to showcase a new product or solution. Because most of the time, if you look at it, most of our customer call when they are not happy with something and there is a support they need. So how do you use that opportunity to maybe they need a better product, maybe they need a better service? How? So I feel personally, if you're able to get a buy-in and broaden your scope and tell your management that a customer support or a call center can definitely help you increase your bottom line and give more value to your customer, I think that is the day that we will be able to make from a cost center to a profit center. I think that's a work in progress. It depends on time to time, but I think that is where we will lead to future.
Vagraj, I would like to come to you. I mean, you're a large consumer internet company, InsurTech, and you're really dealing with people, grievances, insurance, right? So when you look at customer experience, this entire idea of that being treated as a cost center, how often do you have these conversations? Because it's a very intrinsic part of actually what you're dealing with. And that you're in a financial services space, people are very particular about dealing with their money, insurance, grievances. So how do you cut through all of that? Yes.
Yeah, so rightly said. I think it's one of the regulated spaces. I mean, especially InsurTech is, a highly regulated segment. Slightly more regulated even in, compared to traditional fintech companies, I would say. There are two ways of it. When you touched upon the whole cost center angle and how we look at, because the whole D2C is a very growing. There's a huge room. At least talking about Echo in India, there's a huge room for disruption. There's a huge opportunity which is there for millions of customers to get insurance digitally. I think that opportunity is there. And how do we seize that opportunity? And how do we seize that opportunity? Not just by saying by how do we better sell, but it is also about how do we make customer experience as the differentiator. I think that's one of our pillars when we think about why would somebody want to buy an insurance from Echo compared to any other existing legacy player who has been there. LIC is a government company. It's not yet listed, but I think there are so many other it's old age companies. So there are choices, but how do you make that difference is from the experience that you provide, number one. Number two, I think at least from how we view it, I think it is not just about my personal view as well as how we deal with it. It's not just about the traditional earlier view of call center, customer care center, support center, and number of agents talking. The whole traditional metrics of those, right? How it used to happen. I think there's that again. Again, it's in the similar way. I think that whole thing is evolving, right? It's about every engagement is customer experience. Whether that engagement happens at the early part of the journey when discovery happens, when he comes on to your, any channel, whether he comes on your mobile, whether he comes on your website, or any interaction on the phone itself with any agent, or for that matter, he may be not even talking to an agent. He may be talking to a which is so intelligent that it is throwing up the right insights. Any touch point that you get and I get a chance to make the customer happy is what I would say is customer experience. So slightly I would say
More
we don't
broader
have
definition.
broader definition of not just a customer cost center angle of it. I think it's an interaction. Okay, we will reduce costs by using technology. How number of minutes can be reduced, how we can reduce the number of call center agents, which can be reduced by tools, instrumentation, and things like that. But apart from that, any improvement in technology and product which gives, design, which can improve the interaction or the engagement, that has it has a it has a effect on growth. It has an effect on the overall your NPS and the customer happiness index, if I have to call that, right? So the way I would say customer experience is in tandem. When we look at it, we operate growth as a platform, and growth as a platform is tightly coupled with what interventions we do for engagements, what interventions we do for for example, how do we get if a customer is coming in, how do we send a policy directly on WhatsApp? He doesn't have to do anything. If he wants to do some interaction, he doesn't have to even call. How can we make that seamless? So it's all about I think the morphing of the worlds of not just seeing it as a post sales only when there is a problem. I'm talking about customer experience. I think I come from the worldview of saying every interaction point, every engagement point, how we can make it better. And once we start doing that, I think everything is leading to growth. And anything that is leading to growth, anything that is leading to increased satisfaction index of a customer, in my view.
Vamshi, that I would like to take the conversation further from where Vadiraj left. Can you give me specific examples where you have been able to up the customer experience quotient in your organization in the most cost-effective way, and how you managed to do it? We're not looking at customer experience in the cost center question, which always comes by, but in a very efficient way, in a cost-efficient way, how have you managed to achieve that? Yes. You're on mute.
So healthcare services as a Shreya, when people come to us, right? When they are in need and when they are in pain and they need immediate solace, these are the reasons that they come in. And we definitely would not want to add any more pain as a platform or as a provider. And that keeps us on our toes. Like Wadi has mentioned, moments of truth are very important for us. Empathy is very important for us. Every process that we have designed which works here is driven by empathy. Now, walking in the customer's shoes, as they say, that is what has driven us empathy. Now, where did we leverage technology in all of this? So we are a new age company. Again, we are talking about being on the internet, virtual consultations, teleconsultations, where we are able to today connect the patient to the doctor in the next 5 minutes, where traditionally you would have to go run around and maybe ask your friends for a Google reference for who's the best doctor for my condition that I have. From there to being able to connect to a doctor in the next 5 minutes and reduce the overall cost. So if you actually look at the amount of time that is spent by the patient or the customer traveling to and fro and having to wait for the doctor, right? So all of that adds up to 2-3 hours of your time in just reaching for a face-to-face with the doctor. Now, one of the things that we have done is a is a new business that we had started. We call everything a business here, which is called Family Doctor. It is just like what you used to have when for maybe my parents' time or grandparents' time, is when we used to have a family doctor. Family doctor used to know everything. You don't need to do anything. You just call them up and say, they would say, okay, kya ho gaya aaj? What happened to you and how can we do that? So what we did was introduced something called Family Doctor for families who have kids and old age parents. Right, this is where most of the needs are. So when we did that, and when we offered these services, unlimited consultation, and being driven by technology, is when we saw the customer experience going up, the focus on them. Most of people from home started using them. It was a single number that you dial out, or a single click that you would get you connected to the doctor. Now behind this is a plethora of algorithms and connectivity and tech which is involved in making this happen, right? Which doesn't come upfront, but all of that at a click of a button is one of the areas that we did.
So basically,
And second,
you're basically preempting it. You're not waiting for the grievance to come in. You're trying to understand what the consumers' wants and preferences are, and that you've synthesized into this entire family doctor paradigm, right? If I'm understanding it
right.
correctly.
So on top of this, what we have is like exactly the words that you chose, your choice of words of preempting or proactively managing the experience, right? So what we have is what we call as proof of desired states. At each of these moments of truth, did the customer and the provider have a very good experience? Now, how do we ensure that the next touch point is flawless and is as per the customer or the provider's need? So there we also employ technology again in helping us understand and alert us pretty early in the process so that we can take corrective actions immediately, thereby saving a lot of these grievances from happening in the first place, which again all of this gets routed to the call center, so all of this gets added as a cost if you don't handle all of these things proactively and preemptively.
Yeah.
Right.
So I think we just sort of
So
taking the
yeah.
yeah, taking the conversation forward, and I think all of you are talking about the things that you're doing very well. But I'm sure all of this came on back of learning, on back of some missteps that were really happening, right? I want to understand and know that if each one of you were to give me that one misstep or perhaps one course correction that you did in your customer experience journey, what was that? How did you escalate the customer feedback back into the product? How did you escalate that customer feedback back into enhancing the customer experience? What was the missing link and how did you chance upon that? What was that click moment for you? I can maybe perhaps start with you, Adi, then get on to Vamshri, and then Nitin. Yeah.
Sure. Thanks, Srijar. So, very pertinent question, right? So, this is actually the discovery of the problem statement from a customer experience angle, right? Then I would say the way, at least we are looking at it, and we have done some of that. I think I can share some of those instances. Is one is you take like either CSAT, NPS, and get some inputs, feedback, and cover those as a part of your planning and do that. Second is, I think we also, what we do is we actually proactively look for problems that are existing. We see the metrics, what's happening. I think why there are so many calls which are landing for certain use case, certain instance of a problem. For example, I'm just now relaying one of the such examples was like, there was huge calls that were landing for claims, and claims is a very, very, at least in our world, claims is a very, very difficult problem to solve. Despite so many good things you do, I think there will be one or the other problem that will 100% satisfaction may not be there. I think 100% happiness may not be there with the customer. So we took a call of one is analyzing. One is of course the inputs and CSAT and all that. What was happening. Second is data. I think in any product world or a tech company. In our case it's InsurTech. I think all the data that shows up, throws insights, right? In terms of what are those calls, how many of those are claims calls, how many percentage of calls are for, again, in claims, what are those micro use cases, smaller things, what is pointing, which is kind of narrowing down your problem statement. So in our case, we realized that a lot of times, I think customers are calling, and a huge number of customers are calling because we were doing everything right in terms of claim registration. Not solving his problem after the end of the day. Then I think, whether it is 2 days, 3 days, or whatever, if it's complicated, maybe after a few days. But what was happening, interestingly, was I think people were very nervous when their vehicle was in the garage, when their vehicle was away from there, when the claim process was still in place. So we realized that, I think it is not about also doing the main things right. You need to be in touch with the customer of what are all the micro instances that are happening during that journey. So we started introducing the claim statuses. Saying, okay, your car has been picked up. It is in such and such garage. Now this, it has crossed stage 1. It is estimated. Then it is getting I think the problem is getting resolved. Some part has been delivered or whatever. So these are all very, I would say, instances which will, kind of provide the customer the trust that, yes, I think, it is there with Echo. They are taking care of it. Even if it's a delay, I think customer would be still happy is getting the statuses. So this was one, I would say, one example where we suddenly saw that, once we started doing that, the calls, I think the same cohort of customers, I think, was reduced number of calls. So, there are several such examples that can happen, not just with our company. It can happen with any company, but it's a very, very, I would say, insightful analysis that one needs to do, taking customer experience, data clubbed with product teams who are analyzing that. Product manager wearing the hat of what problem is it there? Even before solving the problem, what is the problem? What is that smaller problem statement? And that art of defining that is, I think, what helped us. I think art and science of doing that is goes very well with a lot of tech companies in the current world.
What about you, Amshri? Missteps, which sort of, I think that is a good example that Vadiraj gave in terms of how they went around managing their claims and reducing the calls for that. What has been that experience for you? Yeah.
So something similar, I would say. Status is something which drives everyone crazy, I believe. Being on top, the status is what everyone wants. So in our case, COVID has given us a lot of learning. So two things, one from a government and one from a protocol point of view. We were all discovering during the initial stages of COVID, we were all discovering what is the protocol to handle a home isolation. So each government, each panel of experts were recommending, okay, someone was saying 21 days of home isolation to 14 days to 7 days. So that entire journey of what is the right time for home isolation is something that was discovered over a period of time when we looked at how mild the case is, what are the indicators for COVID, and being able to reduce that from 21 day, almost 21 day to 14 days to 7 days. Some of the inputs that we've been able to pass on to the governments and in the discussions around all of these things, so that the resources can be rightfully used in the right places. So that was one of the learnings in how we manage. And definitely COVID again, and another example is when I get my RT-PCR test, am I positive, right? Or am I negative? Is the biggest question that most of the people who used our services had. And being able to quickly answer that and correctly answer that was a learning. So about going on to Vadi's example, we were doing about 60% of the calls only on status. When is the person reaching us for sample collection? When are my reports reaching me? These are the only two things that everyone was asking. So we went ahead, took this feedback. We generated a status link that we sent out as soon as an order was placed, which the patient or the customer could see what is the status of the person who's coming to collect my sample. And as soon as the sample collection is done, when is my report due and what is the result of that report. So these are two examples where initially we started off with some issues, but definitely with feedback, with monitoring those right metrics, we were able to bring that change in the process and attempt to improve the customer experience.
What about you from a Zendesk perspective? I'm sure you must be having loads of such examples when you deal with your companies, the companies that you work with, that what really have been the missteps which got course corrected to enhance their customer experience journey. Give me the interesting ones, the most interesting one. Yes.
I think before I go to that part, I think for me the CX moment is this. If you tell me, because we are a technology company, we provide technology for what Vadiraj is looking at and what Carl Health is looking at. That is where the Vamshi is looking at. That is where, because they are trying to solve a problem. As a company, as a technology company, we're listening them. If Vadiraj wants to provide status to their customers on the status of their vehicle or other stuff, as a technology provider, I should be able to enable that for him because their core business is insurance. And our core business is technology. I think this every moment of interaction with every customer is a CX moment for us. And if you ask me, that is what we're looking at. How can I provide update to Vamshi for his to give his customers what is there and how fast I can give what is the, how can I give them in any channel, whether it is mobile, website, or WhatsApp, or any other integration. I think that has been the CX moment for a technology company like ours. Just to give you an example, I was one of our, in fact, during the COVID time, one of our customers came back and said, "You have only limited the price offerings that you have, and COVID, our business has gone down. We don't have much option. Why don't you help us out with something which is better from a engagement standpoint, better from offer standpoint? What do we do?" We held on. We took that message to the company. We went and changed our few proposition that we have for the client, gave them a model where they can scale when they want, when there is volume. They can decrease their usage when there is low volume. So these are the flexibility that we give to our client. And this is one of the things that we've done. We've taken a lot of learning from customers like these, where we brought a lot of scope into our product itself. So today, if you look at it, most of the clients are looking at self-help. They're looking at chat. They're looking at chatbot. They're looking at artificial intelligence. There's so many other things we spoke about in the discussion right now. How we can make sure our customer doesn't need to call center. How can he does most of the thing on their own. These are the feedback that has come in the last 2 years, and these are the feedback that we've taken back to the management and to the product team, and we keep learning. And the CX moment happening for me personally, if you ask me, CX moment is every interaction with my client. There is an idea that may get or a suggestion that we get, which will help us to make a better product. And honestly, there are a lot of feedback that I've got within this panel discussion itself, which probably I will go back and tell my team that this is something that we should look at.
So a lot of points to sort of take down note from Nitin's perspective. He's been copiously making notes of what you both of you have been speaking. Let's just take this conversation a little forward. This entire focus on customer experience, but do you think that in some scenarios, perhaps customer experience and employee experience are intertwined? Ultimately, your employees are tomorrow's customers. So, as from an organizational perspective, how many of you are giving importance to employee experience as an equally important metric as customer experience? Yes,
So,
Vadi, a quick
okay.
one from each one of you on this one. Yes.
Sure. Yeah. So I think, in fact, interestingly, I think, when we look at employee experience and customer experience, some ways it is intertwined because the call center agent is an employee. I mean, I think, or a claim center, somebody who's processing the claim is an employee, or even a product manager who is solving a problem for customer experience is an employee. So, I mean, at least from our side, I think, there will be a constant ways and means how we can make the, I mean, in fact, we take KPIs to see that, how the agent experience is more, made more better, how we can make it more efficient. So in fact, there are KPIs to see that, okay, he's doing, maybe for solving a problem, he's taking 6 minutes or 7 minutes. Maybe he doesn't have some tool sets with him. Maybe he doesn't have these things very easy. Some data, it's not coming out easily. So from a product world, I think, that they collaborate with, they see that, the employee on the other side, the call center agent is an employee, and we see that what all does he want, and we in fact try to solve their problems. And in fact there are KPIs to see that how agent experience, and in fact we take agent CSAT. I mean, whether he's happy with what he has at his toolkit. I mean, to make his life easier. And so that's an instance of employee happiness. So both are important. Yes, I think, at least in our world, I think, I mean, no, we do tend to, I mean, we are all brand ambassadors of our brands as well, of our own companies. And we need to be kind of, taking both these things of employee experience and customer experience, actually not as two separate things, but they are actually similar things. I mean, I would say, I mean, but in a look from a different world.
Okay, what about you, Amshi? Yes.
So we look at Glassdoor as intently as we look at our Google ratings, right? So okay, call help. Maybe some of the things that we do are pretty normal, pretty much done everywhere. We what we do is we call everyone a stakeholder within call help, right? We don't call employees; we call them officers who are in charge of what they do, and each officer we treat them as a leader. And this entire thing, what it does is it brings them the ownership of what they're about to do. It brings them the ownership of changing or asking for a change where they see there is a problem. So we have three stakeholders that we constantly monitor. One is the customer patient, who's definitely at the end, who's paying for all the services that we are providing. The second stakeholder is our providers. We have from bedside assistants to nurses to doctors to phlebotomists to radiology centers to diagnostic centers who have to have a fantastic experience on our platform so that they can deliver a better experience to the customer, right? And then we have the third stakeholder, who is the officers, who are the employees within the organization. Now, a balance between these three and closely monitoring, because we are tech enabling every one of these roles, we are tech enabling every one of these stakeholders to be participating on the platform and being able to give us feedback, being able to feel good after they have done business with us is what is our focus. So we, like I said, we look at Glassdoor, we look at our Google ratings for our customer, we look at our Play Store ratings from our providers. Other than the everyday feedback that they provide us, these are also good indicators for us to keep monitoring.
I think one interesting point that some of you sort of mentioned, that Shrija, we look at Glassdoor and the Google rating. I have seen this obsession that insanely unicorn and startup founders have with Google rating, especially of the competition. How is my competitor's app rated? Is it, if it's higher than me, people get the people lose it, they get completely berserk about it. I mean, let's just face it. So it could also be healthy, it could also be positive. So if each one of you were to mention the name of one company which could be your competition, and perhaps from a Zendesk perspective, you could perhaps name me some company which you work with, which gets its customer experience really right, which you think that some things that they have done, which you have learned from them, which could be little pivots or nuggets or wisdom, which have been imparted to you on their customer experience journey. It could be competition, or it could be some company which you admire. For instance, Vadiraj could be a company in the financial services space for you, right? For Vamshi, it could be a company in the healthcare services space for you. So give me those examples. Why do you admire the company and why? Yeah.
Yeah, I can go with that. I think before that, I just want to answer one question on the employee experience in coffee. See, I'll take it back a little while. My dad used to work. The coolest gadget used to be in his office. He used to have the fax machine. He used to have that telephone. We had that phone when we were growing up. I think we didn't have the coolest gadgets was there, and it was there in office. If you look at it today, we have the cool gadgets that are we book app, we book cab using app, we order food using app. And if you don't provide the same experience to our employees, it is inevitable that we will not be able to retain them. I think that is where retention now in the era of great resignation, you see employee experience becomes a very important aspect, and I feel it is very very important for every organization to have same kind of employee experience as good as their customer experience. I think that is what differentiates between a fantastic organization to an organization which wants to retain their time. So for me, we always look at how we keep customer at the center, because for us, if you're able to get some good benefits out of it, is keeping customer at the center and develop everything around customer, whether it is your support organization, whether it is your marketing organization, whether it is your tools organization, product, everything around customer. I think these are the few things that we've learned from our conversation, that how can you be more customer focused, more customer satisfying. I think these are the things that I take away from my conversation and try to incorporate that in my product, in my company, that how we can do better.
That's well said. He actually mentioned Salesforce from Zendesk perspective, that they would like to imbibe some best practices from there. And I think it's a very big revelation coming from a leader, and something which all of us should be appreciative of. Yes, Vadi.
Yeah, so I think the way we see it is, I think especially in the any tech company or consumer internet company, right? I think it's not just one competitor or whatever. I mean, who is in that space. I mean, in fact, to kind of go back to what was told, right? So we are an insure tech company. I think I would say insurance company. Yes, of course we are an insurance company, but how we are trying to be differentiating is because we are an insure tech company and using tech as a differentiator. So our competitors would actually come from. I mean, for each. The way we see it and way we do it is like for any specific theme, specific journeys or whatever. I mean, they can come from any company. I mean, it may be like, for example, Netflix may be a thing for customer acquisition, subscription, or retention kind of a thing. So that theme we may pick that as one company, or it may be something else in the payments space. I mean, how the transaction success rate of some partner is the top of the notch, and I think we would like to kind of imbibe that. So the way we see that is not just taking one benchmark of one competitor and trying to do all of that. It's, I think, journey specific, theme specific, and saying that hey, I think we are here. I think maybe some other companies doing it, they've got all the act right to get it perfectly. I mean, in terms of the metrics. So what are those missing gaps and how we can do that? And in the product world, I think there may be several such things which maybe 5-6 companies which we may be trying for to get our act right.
I think Nitin wants to re-record his last comment. That has the Salesforce
Yeah, I
name
would love to do.
gotten you into trouble with your communications.
Yeah.
I could totally foresee that there's no way they could have allowed for this. Yes. So I think I will allow you this to record your last comment. Yes.
Sure. You want me to go in now?
Yeah, you could. Yes.
Yeah. Thank you, Fisha. I think so. For me, as I said, I think I will go with what Wadi said. I think we learn from everyone. I mean, we are in a technology company. There are a lot of examples that I've seen in technology companies where people have taken great learnings from a lot of companies. Personally, if you ask me, I have taken learning where how Kingfisher used to treat their customers, and they used to treat their customers as kings, and the kind of service that they used to provide within their craft, outside their craft, loyalty, everything. I mean, these are the few learnings that I would love to take, and I would love to incorporate in every company, and especially in Zendesk, that how do you make your customer in the center and use and provide all kind of differentiator to them so that they stay with you, they grow with you. I think the only organization that will stay and grow is an organization which thinks about customer and grows with their customer. I think that's what I want to say when it comes to learning from the industry.
Okay. What about you, Vamshi? Yes.
So I mean, Wadi and Nitin, they hit it on the nail, head of the nail. So see, some of the things are at a feature level, right? For example, if you go and if you are an Airtel user, if you have your Airtel app, the bill payment that you can do for your mobile phones is amazing. You should experience that to see with a click you are able to close that headache, right? That you have to pay for your entire family. They've done a wonderful job in terms of checking out or reducing the time that you spend in just that payment, right? So like that, we have many examples that we look at. So when it comes to checkout experience, we look at Airtel. When it comes to information, WebMD and Mayo Clinic do fantastic work in terms of equipping the patient or the customer with information. So these would be what we would aspire for in each of the feature that we have. So there is no one competition. So we keep saying, okay, for call health, what is the competition? The competition is the status quo in the way the healthcare services are delivered today. And any change that we can, any dramatic, even we aim for a dramatic change, any change that we can do in the service delivery, how it is done. We have many companies today, like we said, okay, click of an app, we have the cab with us, we have the food with us. I don't know what we will get next. But yeah, they're all dramatically changing the experience, and we are also in that line, I would say.
I think my last question to all of you, and perhaps it could be a more fun question, more informal one. The most important trait for the leadership of tomorrow, what would that really be? The most important trait. We're talking about 2022 and the ensuing decade. 5 trillion economy, which India is supposed to become by 2025 or say 2030. And all of you are the future CEOs and the future top C-suite people, right? So the one leadership trait which you think is the most vital for this decade is going to be, what would that be? It could be a one sentence answer at best. I'll start with you, Nitin, get on to Vadi, and then Vamshi. Yes.
I'll say listen to your customer, listen to your employees. I think the more we understand, the better. Both of them, because both are equally important stakeholders for me from a growth standpoint. I think I'll say listen to your employees and listen to your customer.
Okay. What about you, Vadi?
So I would say, I think, given the context where we are in, I think, so many things evolving, so many things. I mean, the problems of yesterday may not be the problems of tomorrow. I think so. I would say any future leader, CEO, I think, customer empathy and the ability to listen and be humble. I think, because no one person would have known everything. I think, it is only by being humble and listening and be empathetic to what your customers want. I think, is what mix of 2-3 traits I said, but I think that's what I feel is the right
Okay.
package.
What about you, Amshi?
See, we all converge there, Shreya. So I would say empathy when put together with impatience, right? Impatience to get it right. Okay, make it right. Understand and quickly deliver. That is what will make the difference.
Okay, great. It was a very interesting conversation, and all of you sort of really put your mind to it and came up with such candid revelation and insightful remarks. Till time I see you next, goodbye and good luck. And this really has been a very interesting series on really trying to understand and decode customer experience from various angles. Thank you so much. Till time I see you next, goodbye and good luck. Bye bye.
Thank you. Thank you, Srija.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Shreya.